Mark Biggs. I work at Lanz Inc. in Champaign, Illinois. My basic role is to oversee the plumbers and help them learn and gain experience, and also to do estimating out in the field to help move things along so the guys have plenty of work in front of them.
Today, we are talking about sub pumps, backups, and alarms. So let's start with sub pumps. Of course, with all this weather we're dealing with, why are sub pumps so important right now?
Well, sub pumps critical to protect your basement, your belongings, in your crawl space to prevent mold and things from growing. And it's just a piece of equipment that if you have a basement or you're in a low area, you really should have one installed.
Could you tell us a little bit about what the sub pump does?
So a sump pump, you typically going to find it in below the ground level in a basin. And the basin basically collects water, and the sump pump then, activated by a switch or a float or some sort of device to make it kick on, evacuates the water from the basin and pumps it to a municipal storm or out into an open air down the hill away from the house somewhere, just to get you away from the house so it's not a problem anymore.
How do you know your sub pump's working and everything's okay with it?
One of the main things you want to do is you want to test it. So you want to go down and lift the float up and make sure it's working. The other thing is you want to just observe and, your discharge pipe if you can see it. And a lot of it, you're going to know if it's not working, obviously, if you have water in your basement or your crawl space. So, that's a pretty good indicator there, but just as a general rule, it makes sense to go down and periodically just flip it up and make sure the switch is working and everything's pumping like it should.
Is there any preventative maintenance, and how could we avoid something like that, your sub pump not working, and you don't want to be in a flood?
Correct. So what we recommend is you do it yourself, or you hire a professional to come out, and what we would do is we'd pull the sump pump out, make sure the intake screens and everything's clean, make sure the check valve's working properly, and just clean out the basin if it has rocks or debris or anything in it, and then just cycle it a few times and make sure it's working okay.
Let's talk about those unfortunate moments where you walk in and it is flooded. Sub pumps can fail and lose power, right? So what do you do then?
Well, at that point, we recommend that you put some sort of non-electric backup pump in, which could be a battery-powered pump or it could be a water-powered pump. The water-powered pump is municipal water, city water, whatever you want to call it, is the first choice because it runs endlessly. It can run forever, which is good and bad. If you get a water bill that's because it's been running endlessly, you probably don't like it as well. But battery backup, they only run for 10 to 12 hours, and then the battery's gone.
Wow.
And if your power's out, it can't recharge. So that's all you have. So if we get an ice storm or we get a bad storm and we lose power for 2 or 3 days and we got melting or whatever, battery backup's not a great option. But if you live in a country on a well or something, your water, you don't want to use a water backup either because you're going to suck your well dry. So
the backups are really a backup for only a short period of time.
That's why it's called a backup.
So ideally, of course, the primary sub pump does all the work, and it doesn't fail a lot though, right?
It doesn't, but there are some things that cause it to fail. That's why maintenance is super important, to check it out and make sure it's working, because as you stated before, there's nothing worse than walking down and your feet get wet when you step in the basement.
Is there sounds of a sub pump that you would say, oh, that's just the sub pump, or maybe we should do more maintenance?
The only time you would think that there was something wrong if you heard something that was abnormal. So let's say you hear a clanking or a gurgling or high-pitched sound of some sort, then you kind of got a feeling that something's wrong. But actually, a sump pump, hearing it kick on and off is a little bit reassuring. If you're sitting in the living room and you hear your pump kick on, you feel pretty good. If you don't hear it kick on, you might want to go check it. So, you get used to the sounds, but I would say there's always going to be some different level of noise or sound coming from your sump pump. Depends on where it's located and your setup of your house. But if you hear something that's abnormal, that's when you want to really start looking into it.
What kind of alarms are recommended when it comes to sub pumps?
There's audible alarms and there's Wi-Fi alarms. And obviously, if you have a home security system, you can have dial-in alarms that can text you. The Wi-Fi alarms, you have an app on your phone, it alerts you no matter where you're at. The audible alarms, they just basically sound a beep or a horn or something to notify you that, hey, we got an issue here, we got some water that's above the levels we want it to be above. It's a lesser known thing with a pump, so people don't realize that the alarm, how important it is to make sure your system's in good or operating order, and you don't run into a situation where you got a costly flood and water damage and mold growth or whatever it may be. So that's the main thing on alarm. It's just making people aware of the importance, I guess, is the critical thing there.
That will actually get you a little more focused on there is a problem.
There's something going on because our water is above optimal level. So we want to make sure we know why that's happening. And plus, you don't want your backup to run as your primary pump. If it's on a municipal water system, you're going to have a huge water bill. So on a backup, we recommend putting in a secondary discharge so it doesn't go into the same discharge that your primary pump. Two things. One, you can see it. And two, you've got a secondary way for something to get out in case your discharge line fails, gets clogged, breaks, freezes, whatever.
How do you at Lanz, how do we find our best sub pump? What is the best advice for finding the best sub pump for your house or anything that you're building that might be dealing with flooding?
So we would want to come to your home and look at your situation, kind of measure the water intake that you have going on, kind of look around and see how you're going to discharge it. And then we would talk to you about, you got a sump pump here that's dry. You don't have any water coming in. So I would recommend putting something in, because not only is it going to take water out that would come in under the slab or under the floor, which could buckle your floor and, harm your house. Also, if you have a busted pipe or a line or something, you can sweep it into there and it can get rid of it that way. So there's a couple different purposes for it. But the only way to really know is to evaluate your situation, because every situation's different. And there's not a blanket here, this is the best thing there is out there and use this one. Many different manufacturers, all of them, I'm sure, great pumps, but we have a certain brand that we like and we stick with because we're comfortable with it and it's been reliable for us.
So can we go through some more signs of or why sub pumps fail?
I would say the biggest failure problem is it's just worn out. It's old. It's been in there for years and years and years, and it's like everything else. If it's not broke, don't fix it. It's out of sight, out of mind, a sump pump is. So it's something you want to keep aware of. A sump pump average life's 6-7 years, 3 to 6 if you got a lot of water. You definitely want to make sure it's in good shape and working right. That's probably the number one. Second probably is it's just not installed properly. So they just got a little hole in the floor and stuck a pump in there, and it's really just can only pump about 2 inches of water, and it's just not a good situation. Mm-hmm. So it's never going to be able to keep up with what you desire for it to keep up with. And if you get a big rain, you're probably going to get a flood. So poor or improper installation's a big key as well. And then, you also, they're mechanical, they're going to fail at times. So you're going to have a float switch or, a component impeller. Something could break or get stuck. That's one of the issues. That's probably the third leading cause. And then, we get the intake, you get rocks and stuff. I went on a job one time where their sump pump wasn't working and somebody dumped a laundry basket in the basin. It was all tangled up with clothes.
Wow.
So, things happen.
Yeah, and it could just be something like that. Yeah. And it's almost an easy fix, even though that's not easy for you to get all the laundry out.
Right.
But that might just be the only problem.
But that might be it. So, that happens. And sometimes, in a new construction situation, a lot of rocks and things will work in there because the ground's been freshly excavated, so things just move around. And so sometimes you just have to stick your hand down in there and clean it out. And that's why it's always a good idea on a maintenance to get it out and check it out and make sure there's nothing down in there to keep it clean. And we have check valve, which is what allows the water to go out and not come back. So we don't want the check valve fails, then the water is coming back, so the pump's just cycling. So eventually it's just going to burn out. That's not a real common thing, but it does happen.
It happens, yeah. And of course, excessive rainfall. Sump pumps should keep up, right?
Well,
right? They should.
They should. So, again, that goes back to our question earlier where how do you know what to put in there? So you want to know, are we on a floodplain where we're getting a lot of water already before we get rain? So we might want to jump that pump up to a larger capacity pump that we can pump more water, or we might want to stage 2 pumps in there. So there's some different things you can do. That's where it's so critical that you go out and you look at, you assess the situation before you just stick a pump in there and hope for the best.
Right.
Well, one of the things we run into a lot in the wintertime, in the early spring, is like we've had some snow on the ground and it's starting to melt. We get a big rain. It happens every year in Illinois. Mm-hmm. And your discharge pipe freezes because it's above the ground and you can't get rid of any water. So, and then the pump just runs, but just not pumping any water, and eventually just gets hot and shuts off.
So someone notices that, they call you right away. Is the best way.
Hopefully, yeah. To save your basement or whatever, get us out there as soon as possible. That's why going back to the backups and the secondary discharge, that's why it's so important to have a secondary discharge that's installed in a different location so it can't freeze.
So backups and and alarms are very important, but the most important thing is that sub pump, that initial primary sub pump.
That's what you want to start out with, right?
So thank you so much, Mark, for teaching us all about sub pumps, and hopefully it's not a floody summer.
My pleasure. Hopefully it's not either. We need the rain though, so we have to be prepared when it comes.
But no floods in the basement. Thank you again, Mark.
Yeah, my pleasure.